All right. Hello, everyone. This is Conversations with Rob. I have a special guest who I'm very fond of. I found her on Status Quo, and she's been endorsed by brand new Congress and also Stacey Walker. And if you guys are Bernie Sanders fans, you know who Stacey Walker is. He's a dynamo that was on the ground in Iowa, really campaigning hard for Senator Sanders. I'm fond of her, not only because she's running for Senate and she's not taking that corporate PAC money, but also because she's really helped a lot of kids in her job, and she was working with neglected kids inside the court system. So Kimberly, thanks so much for coming on, but also for doing what you're doing. We really appreciate that.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. So let's tell the viewers, I mean, we just talked about what you do, but tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So for the last 20 years, I've been an attorney primarily for abused or neglected kids and for parents in the juvenile courts here in Iowa. I've also done some mediation work and some collaborative law work as well. A couple of other kinds of law, but primarily I've spent the last 20 years in juvenile court and working with families. So I also have a 20-year-old son, and kind of the confluence of the work I've done for 20 years, having a young adult son myself, and the 2016 elections are what kind of all came together to prompt me to think about running for office. And I never in a million years thought I would be running for office. I love representing kids and working in juvenile court. And I don't know, we'll see how this election goes. I may be well going back to that as my full-time work, which would be great. I love that too. But I also feel like there needs to be a lot more what I call regular people who know what's going on out there in our country, especially with people of lesser financial means. There needs to be more of us in not just the House of Representatives, which is great, but in the United States Senate. And so I knew that our Senator, Joni Ernst, our junior senator, is simply not representing the interest of most regular people here in Iowa or anywhere in this country, because U.S. senators affect all of us, no matter what state you live in, doesn't matter. All of them affect all of us. And I just looked around in January or so of 2017 after the elections. I found this advertisement for a boot camp at the Chapman Catt Center for Women in Politics at Iowa State University, and decided to go check out. You know, it was kind of, I saw an ad on Facebook like, "Are you a woman interested in running for office?" And I'm like, maybe. So, that was kind of, I signed up for that, and you know, this thing became.
Now you're here.
Yeah, now I'm here.
So we talked about that, and again, as a person that has family members that are juvenile probation officers, thank you for doing what you're doing. But let's kick this around. So you're a person that's not taking corporate PAC money, and we know the people that you're running against, as far as Joni Ernst, is definitely taking all that kind of money. But what other issues are you running on?
Right. I think just real quickly about corporate PAC money, I want to say this. Pretty much any Democrat nowadays is going to tell you they're not taking corporate PAC money. That's become kind of a, you know, even among more moderate or centrist Democrats, you hear that a lot. At least I do. All five of us, there's five of us, and I'm really the most progressive, who are running for this U.S. Senate seat in Iowa on the Dem side, are all saying we're not taking corporate PAC money. And I don't have any reason to think that's not true. I think it is true. None of us are taking corporate PAC money. However, what is now happening is that, unfortunately, some Democrats are kind of running around that and violating the spirit of that statement while still honoring the letter of it by taking corporate lobbyist money.
Yeah.
So now what's happening is, for example, the candidate that was the DSCC endorsed candidate, not me, probably that will shock no one. She has taken, the last time we looked, somewhere, I think, the range of $300,000. It's all in the FEC reports. You can go to opensecrets.org. She's taken that amount from corporate lobbyists. So she's not taking corporate PAC money, but she's taken large donations, $1,000, $2,000, max out $2,800, from individuals who are lobbyists. Some of them are partners in lobby firms that represent pharmaceutical companies, military industrial complex, military contractors, healthcare industry, big tobacco, and on, because we've done the research and other people besides us have done the research. And documented, and it's public record. I mean, anyone can go. When someone gives a large donation, it'll have the name of the person, their occupation, and their employer. And so you can go, and if it says lobbyist, you can look at what lobbying firm they work for, and that's public record, what companies that lobbying firm is registered to lobby for, and anybody can see that. So.
Well, it's funny, Kimberly, that, they're doing stuff like that, same stuff they're doing on the presidential level, but they are doing these things as far as with taking money from the lobbyists, and then they go up on a debate stage or in a speech or in a town hall and say, well, we're going to fight for Medicare for all, or we're going to fight for the public option. No, you're not, because you're taking the money, as you said, right from those healthcare industry workers. You're taking the money from big real estate, from big developers, regardless of fossil fuel. So it's the same old, and we're happy people like you are running that aren't taking that type of money, because you're for the people. You are really for the people because you're not taking money from anybody else.
Right, and that's true. I mean, we have had literally 2, maybe 3 max out donations since May of $2,800, and those were people that just literally randomly found me, read about who I am and what I'm trying to do, and had the resources to write a big check and decided to do it. And we're really grateful for those people. But most of our donations are the $20, $50, $5, $1. That's the vast majority of our donations. We don't have a lot of really high dollar donors to this campaign. We've done pretty well, mostly because of our digital outreach director. His name is Tim. I always have to give him a shout out. He has almost single-handedly, I pop in there every once in a while and I tweet myself, but mostly Tim has built our Twitter following from 0 in June of last year, June of 2019, right, to it's like 42 or 43,000 today. Wow. With huge. 0 paid ads. Like, they used to allow paid ads, and even when they did allow it, we never bought any. That is all organic growth, and it's due to Tim really almost, I think, full time. I mean, he's on Twitter and on Facebook all day, every day. And he's not just, the thing I love about what Tim has done for our campaign is he really does such a great job of just hitting issues right in the heart. When Joni Ernst, he follows her account, of course, and reads every single day what she's putting out. And a lot of what he does is retweets what she puts out and says, either that's not true, or here's the real facts, or that's harming people, and here's what Kimberly's going to do if she replaces you. So it's taking what she says, telling the truth about it, and then highlighting how different we could, what a different U.S. Senator we could have for Iowa if people support our campaign. And because of our huge Twitter following, we now are able to fundraise with $5 and $10 donations from this huge base, wonderful supporter base of 42,000 people. So when we put out a tweet saying, hey, everybody, can you chip in $5 today or $10 today? We've got 3 full-time staffers and 2 part-time. And we have to pay for gas to drive all over this really big state, and yard signs and literature, and, the voter file. Let's talk about that. We just had to purchase the voter file. We put it off as long as we could. You have to purchase that from the Iowa Democratic Party. You cannot run a campaign without it. I mean, you could, but not effectively. You right. couldn't effectively. It costs $60,000.
Wow, that's insanity.
60,000.
Jeez.
And so I had to personally putting my own financial butt on the line, which, believe me, I don't have a lot of money. Kids, attorneys for kids aren't making the huge bucks. Right. And I owe massive student loans of my own still from going through law school and paying for it myself. And I had to sign on the dotted line for myself for $60,000. So the campaign is making monthly payments of like 15,000 to the IDP to have this voter file. But we wonder why there are no regular people.
That's right. I was just going to say.
There's no waitresses. There's no teachers. There's no janitors. There's no nurses. There's no stay-at-home parents. Whatever running. There's no preschool teachers running for office. Well, hello. When it's $60,000 just to purchase the voter file. That you would need to run a successful statewide campaign, no wonder. And it's cheaper if it's, congressional, if it's just a portion of the state, but it's not dirt cheap. It's still like $20,000 or something. I mean, it's more if it's statewide versus sections of the state, but it's still incredibly expensive. And that's just that. That's not paying your campaign staff. That's not yard signs. That's not advertising. That's not any of that.
Yeah, it's a scam, and that's as you said. And I was just going to jump in right when you say that, but as you said, that's why they're doing that. They don't want people like you to run because they want to make it as hard as they can to get those regular people out, and they can get their corporate candidate in. They'll pay that fee for them, and then they just own them for the rest of the time. And as you said, if it's not the Democratic Party, it's one of these other organizations, Fossil Fuels Healthcare, that owns that candidate, and they'll pay the fee. But once you get in, it's time for that kickback, baby. That's it. So,
well, I tell people, when I mention this, sometimes. So, okay, human nature is we decide something, and then that old confirmation bias, right? We decide something for some reason, and then we look for things to bolster and support what we already believe. That's human nature. I do it. You do. Everybody does that. So what I've noticed is people that have decided they're supporting the DSCC candidate in this race in Iowa, before they even knew who anybody else was going to be running, right? They're going to want to continue to support that candidate. They've probably already donated money to her, and they feel like they have skin in the game, and they want to support that candidate. And when I've mentioned this money that is being taken by corporate lobbyists, sometimes the response I get is, well, that doesn't mean that she's going to do what they say when she gets to Washington. And here's what I say about that. I say, look, when I donate money to a candidate, me, like my $25, right, or whatever, I don't do it because I like their smile or I like the color shirt they had on that day. I do it because I think they're going to do something for me.
Right. Yeah.
So even if somebody's donating $1 or $5, it's because we hope and we think that they're going to do something for us or for our family or for the environment or for something we care about, right? We do it because we're like investing in them getting elected, because then we think they're going to take actions to benefit us or our family or our planet or however you want to say that. When a pharmaceutical lobbyist donates $2,000 to a candidate, I just don't believe, maybe it's, okay, I just don't believe they're doing it because they just really like that candidate and want them to get elected. I think they're doing it because they think if they give a $2,000 or $2,800 or whatever it is donation, that they're going to come knocking on the door of that U.S. Senate office. Right. Once that person is in office and say, hey, our corporate attorneys wrote this law. Would you please go get it passed?
That's right, 100%.
I
want. Yeah. No, I'm sorry to interrupt, Kimberly,
no, you're fine. Go ahead.
I just want to say basically what you said brings me back to, as a political junkie as yourself, back to 2016, Bernie and Hillary in the New York debate, when Bernie said Hillary got her $300,000 speaking fee, and she went over there and told them to cut it out on Wall Street and stop making all these bad laws. And it goes to the same thing that what you said about is taking money that, oh yeah, somebody's going to go up there and say, cut it out after they got $300,000 or more. It's just a total joke. But I want to get into your platform. So as a person that's a progressive, and when I found out about, when I researched you, is a person that stands up for what they believe in, stands up for the what the regular people need in this country: Medicare for all, Green New Deal, debt-free college. As you said, you're still paying your debts as far as law school. So can you just talk to the viewers about that? And then I have a common question I'm sure you get after you explain that.
Okay, so the top three issues that we talk about the most, and there's, of course, you know, there's so many that are so important. So I don't want anyone to think, oh, well, why doesn't she care about this or that? We care about all of it. But the things that we find that I talk about most out in rural areas, in urban areas, whether it's people that are well off, whether it's people with lesser financial means, these things affect all of us in some way. Our healthcare, the climate crisis, and kids. And when I say kids, I mean universal child care, paid parental leave, universal pre-K that every child in this country gets without their parents having to get out a checkbook and write a check for a pre-K program, for example. Universal child care. We're the only nation, only developed nation that doesn't have some kind of universal child care program. So, for example, in the state of Iowa, at least, if you're very, very poor, you can get child care assistance that will cover the cost of your child care. Mm-hmm. If you can find it. That's another little sub thing. Like there's such a desert, you know, there's not enough child care, not enough high quality child care anywhere in this country. But anyway, that's a side issue. If you can find it, it will pay for it. However, if you make 1 penny over this poverty level, you lose your child care. Gone. Just like that. People are literally, I just was speaking to a woman a couple nights ago in Cedar Rapids who is she's a dentist, the woman who was at our volunteer event. And she has somebody who works for her in her dentist office who she wanted to give a raise to. Mm-hmm. And the person that this dentist I was talking to employs told the dentist, I can't take the raise. I'll lose my child care subsidy. And that's what we're doing. We have this weird idea, well, not maybe we progressives, but some people, GOP, I'm looking at you, have this idea that, you know, public assistance and all this stuff like disincentivizes people from working. I would argue that having things like a child care subsidy that you fall off of when you make 1 dime too much is disincentivizing people to work. And by disincentivize, I just mean you then can't. You have to then quit your job and stay home with your kids, or else don't take that raise, don't make more money. So it's just keeping people stuck at this financial level. Whereas if we had a universal child care program in this country, and I'm already working on this, by the way, like this is proposed legislation that I would like to get passed in the United States Senate. Working title, American Child Care Act. Anyway, the ACCA would be some kind of a stair step thing. So when you make this much, then you don't all of a sudden lose all your child care. You just maybe start paying child care at the rate of, I mean, I'm making numbers up right now, but maybe you pay $10 a week, right? If you make a little more money, you pay $10 a week for your child care. And then if you make more money, maybe you pay $40 a week for your child care. Right. Until the point where at some point, if you make over a certain amount, you don't get any subsidy for childcare because you don't need it because your household income is $200,000 a year or whatever it may be. But that makes much more sense, right? Because then we have people still out there working and they want to work. I mean, I've worked with mostly poor single moms for my whole career, and they want to go work. They want to make a better life for themselves. They want to kind of work their way up in a company or whatever, but they can't. They hit this ceiling where if they have children, they just can't get there. And as far as healthcare, I mean, we need a Medicare for all type system like they have in Canada with private doctors, private hospitals, one payer, payments go through the government, done. I mean, it's just appalling and amoral that we don't have that in this country. A lot of people who are so against this, what I'm talking about right now, are the same ones, ironically, who are the ones out there waving the American flag and chanting, USA, USA, we're the best country in the world. Right. And the funny thing about that is I agree with them. I really think we are the best country in the world. We have our positives, we have our negatives, for sure. We're always trying to get better. But we have money. We have the most financial resources. We have the most creative people. We have, I think, the best entrepreneurship. We have the best technology. We have all of this stuff. And yet we aren't taking care of our people. We are
Agreed.
not investing in our people. We are investing hard and heavy in the top 10% or so of people in this country. And we've done that for about 40 years now, like really at a really hard and heavy level. And it's worked great.
Yeah. Well,
for them.
I agree, 100%.
And it hasn't worked for anybody else. And so we need to start taxing those people appropriately, taxing wealth and income appropriately, so that we can make all of the investments, and I call them investments because that's what they are. They pay off, they grow the economy, they make everyone healthier and happier. The US is always one of the least happy developed countries on earth when they do those surveys, by the way. We need to start doing all of that, and we can, but we won't until we get more regular people into Congress. It won't happen.
But I want to go into this. You talked about your opponents and the one that the DSCC is helping to fund. What would you say is the differences between you and her? Obviously, we know the corporate influences, that she's influenced by corporate money. But besides that, policy-wise.
Yeah. So her name is Teresa Greenfield. She's a very nice person, you know, as are all the people running. And I'm not just saying that to sound placate. I mean, they're all nice people. I respect them all who are running for this seat. I obviously see them all the time because we all speak at the same events. I saw most of them yesterday. I'll see them all again tonight at a soup supper. So we all see each other all the time whenever there's, you know, candidate forums and fundraisers for county Democratic Party things and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So Teresa is the president of, I take that back. I think she recently, I've seen the term former president recently. So I think she recently resigned to campaign full time. But until very, very, very recently, she was the president of a real estate company, a real estate, I believe, development company. You know, we all have to file financial statements when we file to run for office, and I believe those are public record. But to be honest, I haven't looked at anybody else's. I do know that Eddie Morrow, who's one of the other people running, owns an insurance company, and he loaned $1.5 million of his own money to his campaign last month. So he's got, and again, nice guy, nice person. And he's also donated, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Eddie. Eddie's donated a lot of his money too, to the community and to, you know, different things in the community that does a lot of good. But, you know, he's got the money to invest that kind of money and basically self-fund a run for U.S. Senate. Teresa, until a couple of weeks ago, did not have an issues page on her website at all. There was absolutely nothing there. And she announced she was running back in, I believe, early June of 2019. Wow. And until a couple of weeks ago, there was no issues page. And the issues page, maybe it was coincidence. I'm always willing to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. But we put up this graphic. So my communications people are amazing. They designed this graphic that had me, Teresa, and Joni Ernst. And under me, and then over here it said, like, you know, healthcare, like what was my policy, student loans or education, what was my policy, whatever, you know, several different topics. And most of them for Teresa were question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. And within a day of us putting that graphic up on Facebook and Twitter, we went to her website and it had an issues page.
Interesting. It's weird how all that happens.
They started realizing people were starting maybe to notice, because we've gained so much traction, like on Twitter and on Facebook, you know, that people were going to start noticing that she didn't have positions on her website. And so they do have an issues page. I've only skimmed through it, I think, once. If I remember right, at least when I looked at it last, it didn't actually, though, like have a position on healthcare. It just said something, I think, like affordable healthcare.
Yeah, that's like what they do.
Affordable access, or something like that. And so it didn't say. I don't think it even said like a public option, and I don't want to swear to that, but I don't think it even said that, although I have heard her say that once when I was listening to her speak at an event that we were both at, saying something like, well, somebody asked her, like, well, what exactly would you want to do? And I think she replied, this was back last summer, we were both at a luncheon together in Southern Iowa. And I think she said something like, well, I think probably a public option would be a good idea. But it was just like said in a little, it was like a little sub offhand comment. It was, so yeah, the upshot of it is there don't seem to be any really well thought out proposals or issues like I have with the American Child Care Act, or, you know, Medicare for All type system, or anything else that we can really find. It just seems to be, she's raising a lot of money, you know, which I'm not surprised, because when you have people putting on fundraisers for you all over the country, and when you're holding yourself out as the only candidate running against Joni Ernst, which is what she's doing. Like, I'm actually on her email list. Like, I never asked to be on it, but because I've donated to other Democrats in the past, I've been getting Teresa Greenfield's emails since last summer, like all her fundraising emails. And those emails never, ever mention that there's a contested primary, ever. They make it sound like she is the only candidate running whenever I've seen or read anything that comes like from her campaign in that way.
So how has that been? So you're running around the state. You are with all these other 8 candidates. How has the reception been around the state? I know you spoke about the Twitter, and that's huge to go from 0 to 40,000 in that matter of time. But how has the reception been, and the money and all that other stuff's been going pretty well then?
Yeah, I mean, the reception's actually amazing. I think that for better and worse, and I think mostly it's actually good, we just need to get better candidates. I think that the message with Joni Ernst being elected was, we are tired of politics as usual, and we are tired, we the people who are voting are tired of people that are bought by corporations and of the same old going on in Washington. Because Joni Ernst's campaign slogan, she wasn't really getting much traction until this commercial came out where she said, I'm gonna make them squeal. And I mean, it was such a big, funny thing that it got to be like a Saturday Night Live, like, you know, skit and stuff. So a lot of people thought that she was really going to be more moderate, and that she was going to help root out corruption in Washington, because that's what she said when she was running in 2014. And then the reality has been that she was recruited from the Iowa State Legislature by the Koch brothers and their political machine. And she has consistently voted in ways that just simply prop that whole thing up and support corporations or the NRA. The NRA donated or spent $3.1 million, I believe, for ads against her opponent in the 2014 election. And you know, she recently would not vote for the Violence Against Women Act because she didn't want to close the boyfriend loophole. She didn't want boyfriends to not be able to get guns.
Yeah, she's something else. And then she votes pretty much 100% with Trump. So that's what they all do.
And yeah, 90 something. And she's voted to confirm all of the utterly unqualified federal judges. A lot of people think they haven't been doing anything in Washington for the last 3 years. Oh no, they have. They just haven't been doing anything that's going to help regular people. What they've been doing is literally confirming federal judges to lifetime appointments as fast as they possibly can. And these judges are young and super conservative and come recommended by the Federalist Society. They are nothing even close to neutral.
Yeah, no, I agree.
They are the federal courts, stacking.
I agree.
And that's going to be till those people retire or die. So those people are there like forever.
Right. So I want to ask some more questions on policy that's got to do with Iowa and the Heartland, and then move on to a little bit of Iowa caucus talk. Since you're in the heart of the debacle, our viewers do from all over the country want to know what the heck happened in Iowa. But let's get to this policy first. You did to speak about climate change is a huge issue. We've seen droughts and floods in Iowa in the past maybe 10 years. I remember, I think it was in 2008, there was a real disaster flood there. I'm not sure if that's the correct year, but around that time. What is your plan for climate change? And we've seen Bernie Sanders went really big on climate change. So has Tom Steyer running too as a Democrat. What's the plan on climate change from you, Kimberly?
Yeah, so I mean, I absolutely support the Green New Deal, the one that's been put forth by AOC and various other people that are currently in Congress. But that to me is like the floor. We need to do a lot more than that. Those are all great starts, and that's a really good roadmap for we have to be here by this time, and here's what we need to do, and here's some of the various areas where we can make a lot of progress. And I love the Green New Deal, though, because like the old New Deal, the purpose is not just to clean up our climate, and mitigate the climate crisis, but it's to create millions of really good paying new jobs, unionized jobs, right. Jobs for all people, all income levels, all skill levels, all, including everybody, not leaving people behind in that. So 100% support that and everything else that we can do. I mean, Elizabeth Warren actually, I feel, has some really, really good ideas. I've looked through, of course, I've read through Senator Sanders' proposals and webpage and platform. And Senator Warren has in particular something called a green manufacturing plan that you can go look at on her website. And that calls for many different things. But one of the things I love about that is that it would require the federal government to invest in green technology and to purchase that green technology from unionized companies who are producing that technology or those products, whatever it is, within the United States. So that helps bolster the economy and addresses technology and innovation, research and development, and all of that into one package.
So Kimberly, let me ask you this, and this is the question that I'm sure you get from the right wing, the conservatives, that come up to you, and not to single them out, because I know quite a few conservatives in the state of Florida that said they agree with a lot of stuff that Senator Sanders is for. So it's just you got to say it and talk in their terminology. But regardless of that, we have all these people in the mainstream media and some of the right wing saying, how are you going to pay for the Green New Deal? How are you going to pay for Medicare for all? So how do you go about answering that question? My thing is, Kimberly, is that how are we going to pay? Nobody said how we're going to pay for the Trump tax scam. Nobody said how we're going to pay for all the money in the defense budget. We just went up to $787 billion. Nobody says how we're going to pay for the war in Iraq, the war that they want to start in Iran, and all this other stuff. It's a total scam. How do you handle that question?
Right. Yeah, well, with Medicare for all or some kind of universal single-payer healthcare system, whatever it is. And by the way, I just want to side note, the reason I sometimes say universal single-payer, I am 100% for a plan a la Canada, like Canada's, right? A universal covers everybody, nobody's left out. Private doctors, private hospitals, private providers, but government payment, which is what the Medicare for all bill that's currently sitting there calls for. My only little hey, we better pay attention to this about that is if we don't have sufficient reimbursement rates, if we don't have doctors and hospitals and providers being reimbursed for the care they are providing at a high enough level, then it won't be a sustainable thing to have. And I don't yet see actual reimbursement rates anywhere. So that's my little let's just, yes, let's keep marching strongly in that direction and let's get there as fast as we possibly can. And we also have got to make sure that it's a sustainable long-term program. We don't want to roll something out and then go, oh, that's not going to work now. All of our hospitals and doctors are broke, So I'm confident that the people that are pulling the levers on those plans right now and trying to get them up on their feet and running know all of this. I would just like to remind everyone that those reimbursement rates have got to be sufficient or we're dead in the water. But as far as how do you pay for it, Medicare for all is the only thing we can afford.
Yeah.
We can't afford to keep doing what we're doing. It's breaking us. And we spend the most per person, per capita of any developed nation on earth, like by far, not just by a little bit, but by far. And yet we have millions of people underinsured and uninsured. We literally have people dying because they're putting off going to the doctor, and maybe that cancer could have been cured if they'd gone a year ago, but oh, now they waited because they didn't have the money for their co-payment or co-insurance or deductibles. So now they're in far worse shape. And we're the only country that has people dying from rationing their insulin. That is absolutely insane. We spend about $3 trillion a year on healthcare in this country, in the United States. And fully 1/3 of it, $1 trillion out of the $3 trillion, is spent on sales, marketing, appeals, denials, pre-approvals, pre-authorizations, back and forth between the hospital and the doctor and the nurse and the insurance billing person at the doctor and at the hospital. It's absurd. And it's not that $1 trillion of the $3 trillion is not going for 1 second of patient care. So it's incredibly inefficient, and it's inefficient while certain small numbers of people are making billions of dollars in profit off of this current system. So we can absolutely afford it, because it would cost less than the $3 trillion a year that we are spending now.
And we have people dying, and they're going broke too.
Yeah, people going into bankruptcy. In 2018, there was a really good study done that showed that 42% of American cancer patients lose their life savings, if they have any, within 2 years of their diagnosis. 42% of American cancer patients have lost everything they ever worked for within 2 years of a cancer diagnosis.
It's disgraceful.
It's disgraceful.
Yeah.
It's disgraceful. We have the same issue with the nursing homes. People that are in their elder years, where one of the couple needs to go into a nursing home, they have to spend down all of their assets to pay for nursing home care before they can get any kind of assistance. We have people, and most of us know some of these people, but we don't know we know them, because understandably they're kind of ashamed that they did this, but they have no other option to maintain anything they've ever worked for. People are getting divorced in this country in their elder years so that one of the spouses can go into a nursing home and get some kind of assistance, so they don't have to spend every cent they ever made in their life that they worked so hard for to get any kind of assistance. And my understanding is that Senator Sanders' Medicare for All proposal includes nursing home care, so that nobody will ever have to, spend the $300,000 maybe they saved in their lifetime, or whatever number it is, because there's another spouse there, right? And that other spouse has to live too. And so when we have to spend people into poverty to get any kind of help, how is that okay? It's not.
You know what gets me, and as a person that's a Christian, and I hear all these people like Donald Trump and all these people run around talking about God and stuff like that. How can we be Christians and take care of our people like this? That's not being a Christian. Cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security like it is in his budget that he just proposed. And any Democrat that votes for that budget is not a Democrat. They're disgraceful, because they're hurting the elderly, they're hurting people with special needs, they're hurting kids, they're hurting single mothers, and the list goes on and on. So any Democrat is not a Democrat that votes for that. And any person in general that votes for that is a disgrace to the country. Mm-hmm. So, but I do want to get on to another issue that's big in your neck of the woods, rather, is big agriculture. We've seen that, and in my area, we're in a lot of the urban areas. As we don't see as much. I mean, Florida does with the citrus industry, but as far as big agriculture, it's crushing local farmers right now. So, can you tell urban America that I'm with right now how big ag is really crushing all these local farmers, and how to solve it? We've heard a lot about breaking up these industries. And the huge companies, because they're getting all this money and they're giving money to the politicians, so that doesn't happen. But can you talk about that?
Yes. So every 4 years, we have something called a farm bill. For those of you who don't know, or, because you don't live in an agricultural state or whatever, these farm bills come out every 4 years, and, the Senate and then how they all get together and figure out the farm bill, what's going to be in the farm bill. Well, I'll tell you what's mostly in the farm bills. Mostly it's giveaways, incentive, and subsidies to giant agricultural, multinational, industrial agriculture, I call it, companies. And so that is just perpetuating the system of you have to get larger and larger and larger and larger parcels of land to succeed, because bigger is better, and it perpetuates that whole you got to get bigger to be sustainable and all of that. So we need to get U.S. senators from more agricultural states in there, like me, who are going to stand up and say, no. What we need to be doing is enforcing our antitrust legislation, breaking up these giant corporations that continue to grow larger and larger by acquiring each other. What that means, so some of your viewers, like I would before I knew much about it, would say, well, so what? They're getting bigger, whatever. Well, what that means is, in real terms, is that the small and medium-sized farmer now only has 1 or 2, maybe 3 on a good day, choices of where to get their seed, where to buy their fertilizer, where to buy their other chemicals, for all of it. And then the kicker is that they only have 1 or 2 places to sell their commodities, and someone else is basically setting the price for those commodities. So here's this farmer who's now turned into a serf, kind of, on like an indentured slave, or whatever terminology you want to use. A serf is the one I use most often, right? Because yes, they are on the land, but everything about their work and their profitability is basically dictated by somebody else. And then, here's another little fun fact. But when something goes south, the farmer takes the hit for it, not the big conglomerate who's controlling all of this up and down the scale. And so we've had an increase in farmer suicides in the last few years. We've had a rapid increase in farm bankruptcies. We've had a rapid increase in banks in smaller rural communities straight up refusing to loan money to farmers, which, for those who don't know, how farming typically works is you borrow money to plant every year, and then you hopefully pay it back, right, in the after harvest, and you get, well, because farming is looking so bad, there's banks that straight up wouldn't loan money to farmers this past spring, and because of the climate crisis, a lot of farmers couldn't even plant because their fields this past spring, a decent percentage of them were underwater. They were just underwater, and you can't, of course, go out there with machinery and plant anything in standing water. You just can't do it. So it's just a horrible situation. So how do we turn it around? So there's a couple reasons we need to turn it around. I mean, we need to turn it around for the small and medium farmers to try to get those small and medium farms to become more plentiful. We need more small and medium farms instead of fewer and fewer and fewer, which is what is happening. And so we need to incentivize and subsidize them. Just like we've incentivized and subsidized mergers and acquisitions and big, huge companies for 40 years, and that's worked great for them. Now they're bigger than ever. Well, we need to do investments in what we want to see more of, which is sustainable agriculture. And we can do that, but we have to then stop putting all this investment via subsidies and incentives, giving those away, giving those to those large corporations, and start really investing in small and medium farms. Small and medium farmers are not interested in destroying the environment. They don't want to be doing that. They understand and respect the land, but they also are hanging on by their fingernails trying to make a living. And so we have to give them a little boost up and help them do the things they want to do, like put more buffer strips in their fields, build wetlands around the edges of their fields, because that helps filter the chemicals that come off of the fields. We need to help them become organic or lower spray if that's what they want to do. I was really lucky to go visit a farm in Heartland, Iowa last summer. Ron Rossman is the name of the farmer. And he is with Practical Farmers of Iowa, which is a growing organization of kind of farmers teaching farmers how to have a more diversified, small to medium-sized farm that you actually can make a profit off of and make a living off of, and also in a way that is better for the environment. And so Ron told me he has not purchased any nitrogen in something like 30 years. And for like somebody that they're going, okay, whatever. What that means is, so nitrogen is one of those things that really leaches and pollutes our water, right? So Ron hasn't purchased or used any nitrogen. Instead, he raises free range cattle and raises pigs, hogs in an environmentally friendly way. And he uses the manure from those things along with other things from his farm to create giant compost piles. I was out there and I got to see it. I mean, this pile's like football field long and really wide. And he uses that to fertilize instead of purchasing nitrogen and then having that nitrogen, leach.
That's great, yeah.
It's saving him money. It's saving the environment. When he free ranges his cattle, they are stomping on the grass. That is sequestering carbon. Yep. So, I mean, and he's also rotating his crops. He was mentioning he grows oats. He also grows corn for popcorn. So he sells the popcorn, organic popcorn, directly to companies that sell organic popcorn, like in a grocery store. Yeah. He grows barley. He grows all kinds of different crops. And the rotation of those crops, instead of only growing corn and soy, which is typically what we grow in Iowa, corn and soy, corn and soy, corn and soy. When you rotate in other crops, that also makes the soil healthier. You have to use fewer enhancements. You can use less chemicals on your fields because you're enriching the soil by changing up the crop rotation. So there is so much that can be done to change the way that we do agriculture in this country and make the country healthier. Oh, and by the way, it's also more labor intensive, so it creates more jobs.
Agreed. And thank you for all that, because a lot of people don't know the vast amount of information that you just said. So I appreciate you telling all the viewers that are from the cities that don't know, they'll be honest, don't know what the heck's going on in the Heartland. I want to talk about this, because you just brought this topic up about farmers. We see a lot of farmers for Trump. Why do you feel like all these farmers are still with Trump?
So first, I would say that I think fewer and fewer of them are. So I think it goes back to what I mentioned about Senator Ernst. I think that, unfortunately, that Democrats have just not done a very good job of really and truly being for the people.
I agree. And
so I think that while there's, of course, going to be, I think, a small number of people who just were straight up reacting to the racist, xenophobic, ridiculous rhetoric, harmful, hateful rhetoric that the president used in his campaigning and still uses. While some people were reacting to that, I can't even tell you how many people said, I don't like that he says those things. I don't like that he talks about those things. I don't like that he talks about, people from other countries or religions in that way. But I was not going to vote for the alternative. Yeah. And I was hoping that since he's a successful businessman, another lie, but that's a digression, but that was his image, was, hey, I'm such a successful businessman. Plus, he's one of the best con men that has ever walked the face of the earth, in my opinion.
Agreed, yeah.
And so I think all of that combined, too many people were hurting and angry and like, I'm done with politics as usual. Maybe this guy.
Yeah. Well, I lost you.
Nobody else has fixed my life. Nobody else has done things that I can point to and said that really helped my family.
Right.
But I think the farmers, like so many other people who voted for him, though, have now seen that unless they are already very wealthy, in which case he absolutely has come through for them, I'm sure they're way better off than they were 3 years ago. Absolutely. If you're extraordinarily wealthy, yeah, you're better off than you were 3 years ago. At least your bank account is, I guess I would say that. Maybe not you, but your bank account. I think people now are waking up and saying, I don't know how else you also describe the continued expansion and success of Senator Sanders and also of Senator Warren's campaign. I know here in Iowa, if you added together at any given time the polling numbers for Warren and Sanders, which had essentially an extremely similar message in a lot of ways, which is, hey, who's standing up for the little guy? That's the majority of Democrats.